The Old Man and the Sea, Part 42. When he sailed into the little harbor, the lights of the terrace were out, and he knew everyone was in bed. The breeze had risen steadily and was blowing strongly now. It was quiet in the harbor, though, and he sailed up on to the little patch of shingle below the rocks. There was no one to help him, so he pulled the boat up as far as he could. Then he stepped out and made her fast to a rock. Remember, fast here is like secure, right? He attached the boat to a rock. He unstepped the mast, so took the mast of the position, right? And furled the sail and tied it. Then he shouldered the mast and started to climb. Put the mast here. Started to climb. I'm always impressed at this part because, you know, he has been through hell, and there is this huge frustration, you know, of losing the biggest fish he has ever fished. And finally he is at the shore. You know, what would I do? I would just leave the boat there, you know. I don't know, maybe tie the boat, but just leave the boat there, leave everything there, go to my house and I don't know, sleep. I would, I don't know, enjoy my frustration and my depression, or at least not worry about those things like the mast, like the sail for a long time. But no, he knows he has to do certain things, so he does it, right? And this part always impresses me. He unstepped the mast and furled the sail and tied it. Then he shouldered the mast and started to climb. It was then he knew the depth of his tiredness. He stopped for a moment and looked back and saw, in the reflection from the street light, the great tail of the fish standing up well behind the skiff's stern. Well behind is like very behind, right? Because the fish was so big that the tail was well behind the stern. He saw the white naked line of his backbone in the dark mass of the head with the projecting bill, in all the nakedness between. Of course, there is nakedness between because the sharks have eaten everything. He started to climb again, and at the top he fell and lay for some time with the mast across his shoulder. Well, it's impossible not to think about Jesus carrying the cross, right? Keep in mind that, I'm very sorry if I can't give you proper information, but there is this discussion. If I'm not wrong, it's historically inaccurate, or at least there is this discussion that Jesus actually didn't carry the cross, you know. He carried this part of the cross here, right? This part would be already fixed there in the ground, so he carried this part, so then they would put those two parts together and crucify him. Even so, of course, I think if that's the idea, then the image is exactly like Jesus carrying the part of the cross. If not, if you believe Jesus carried the whole cross as we see in movies, right, in plays, then the image doesn't. The image is not nullified because of that, right? So he didn't, take a look, the old man didn't just leave his cross there and went home. No, he fell, he tried to get up, but it was too difficult, and he sat there with the mast on his shoulder and looked at the road. A cat passed on the far side going about its business, and the old man watched it. Then he just watched the road. Finally, he put the mast down and stood up. He picked up the mast and put it on his shoulder and started up the road. He had to sit down 5 times before he reached his stack. If I'm not wrong, if you're a Catholic or a Protestant that pays attention to that, Jesus fell 3 times. I think that's the idea. I say if you are a Catholic more than a Protestant because if I'm not wrong, when you are praying the rosary, there is something they used to call the mystery. The first mystery, Jesus fell, and etc. There is something I remember very vaguely because I used to say Hail Mary and Our Father. Hail Marys and Our Fathers because there were a lot, when I was like 9 years old, 10 years old, so it's a long time. But I remember there was something related to that. Each time Jesus fell, there would be a part in the praise there, something like that. Okay, so he had to sit down 5 times before he reached his shack. Inside the shack, he leaned the mast against the wall. In the dark, he found a water bottle and took a drink. Then he lay down on the bed. He put the blanket over his shoulders, and then over his back and legs, and slept face down on the newspapers with his arms out straight, and the palms of his hands up. Okay, so it's impossible not to think about Jesus again. He was asleep when the boy looked in the door in the morning. It was blowing so hard that the drifting boats would not be going out, and the boy had slept late and then come to the old man's shack as he had come each morning. The boy saw that the old man was breathing, and then he saw the old man's hands, and he started to cry. He went out very quietly to go to bring some coffee, and all the way down the road he was crying. Many fishermen were around the skiff looking at what was lashed beside it, and one was in the water, his trousers rolled up, measuring the skeleton with the length of line. The boy did not go down. He had been there before, and one of the fishermen was looking after the skiff now for him. "How is he?" one of the fishermen shouted. "Sleeping," the boy called. He did not care that they saw him crying. "Let no one disturb him." "He was 18 feet from nose to tail," the fisherman who was measuring him called. 18 feet is about 5 meters and a half, for 5 meters and .4. "I believe it," the boy said. He went into the terrace and asked for a can of coffee. "Hot and with plenty of milk and sugar in it." "Anything more?" "No. Afterwards I will see what he can eat." "What a fish it was," the proprietor said. There has never been such a fish. Those were 2 fine fish you took yesterday too." "Damn my fish," the boy said, and he started to cry again. "Do you want a drink of any kind?" the proprietor asked. "No," the boy said. "Tell them not to bother Santiago. I will be back." "Tell him how sorry I am." "Thanks," the boy said. The boy carried the hot can of coffee up to the old man's shack and sat by him until he woke. Once it looked as though he were waking. But he had gone back into heavy sleep, and the boy had gone across the road to borrow some wood to heat the coffee. Finally, the old man woke up. "Don't sit up," the boy said. "Drink this." He poured some of the coffee in a glass. The old man took it and drank it. "They beat me, Manolin," he said. "They truly beat me." "He didn't beat you, not the fish." "No, truly, it was afterwards. Pedrico is looking after the skiff and the gear. What do you want done with the head? Let Pedrico chop it up and use it in fish traps. And the spear, you keep it if you want it." The question is that I would like to ask you. Couldn't he keep the head? I don't know if you've seen, but many people who fish or hunt, they keep the heads, and that would be a huge trophy for him. The biggest anyone in the island had, right? Couldn't he keep that as a trophy? Why didn't he pay any attention to his trophy? All right, he couldn't sell it, but at least he could prove to everybody that he was great, right? So I would like you to pause the video and try to answer to yourself. I hope you have tried. Let's go to page 48. I just want to read a small part here. I told the boy, I said 48, 58 actually. I told the boy I was a strange old man, he said. Now is when I must prove it. The 1,000 times, now the narrator speaking, the 1,000 times that he had proved it meant nothing. Now he was proving it again. Each time was a new time, and he never thought about the past when he was doing it. Okay, so the idea is, are you a truly exceptional man? So prove it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the past. All right. Mainly when you are facing the task. So I think that's the idea here. You'll have to prove it again. Of course, he'll get weaker and weaker, because as you get older and older, you get weaker and weaker. But taking into account all of that, he'll have to prove again and again and again. Think about it. I don't know if you remember. No, let me change my sentence. Think about it. Let's imagine a very, very old man, who can barely stand up, and I don't know, he sees a child falling, and then this old man gathers all of his strength, gets up, and goes there and helps the child. And then let's imagine, a young man that is, watching TV, the child falls, and then the guy goes there. Think about it. We are talking about two different kinds of deeds here, right? What is my point here? My point is, it's possible for the old man to be heroical, even being very weak. Okay, taking into account all of his limitations, he will be able to do that and that. That's of course just to say that he'll be able, if he keeps being like this, and I believe he will, he'll be able to prove he's a man, he's a real man, until the end of his life. Okay, it doesn't matter if how debilitated he will be. All right. because when you do something exceptional, it's not just the thing itself, but you know, the context, right? Of course, this is not something like, oh, taking into account that he was an old man, wow, that was a great thing. No, his fishing of that marlin is huge for everybody, right? Doesn't matter the age. But just to tell you that it's possible for him to keep proving that he is a great person, right? Um, and then the other question is, okay, so that's why he's not keeping it as a trophy. He doesn't care so much about that, right? And then, or for example, he doesn't have a trophy or anything on his shack to remind him of the great arm wrestling. Remember the arm wrestling he had with the Negro, right, from Cienfuegos, if I'm not wrong. He doesn't have anything. He could, of course, there was no trophy, but I don't know, a glass somebody was using to drink there that could remind, that he could, you know, grab and tell other people his story. My video is ending. I'm going to start a new one.